The Billionaire's Proposal. When the billionaire came to our house to discuss marriage, my twin brother suddenly pushed me forward. At that moment, I realized that he had also been reborn. In our previous life, he followed the billionaire couple home, only to find out that their daughter weighed over 300 pounds and had a terrible temper, often beating and scolding him. However, he endured it for the sake of a luxurious life. Unexpectedly, within a few years, the billionaire went bankrupt, and my brother's affair was discovered by his wife, who then cut off his manhood. Meanwhile, I married a movie star and became a successful person. Unable to bear the poverty in his broken body, he dragged me off a building with him. This time, he gave up the position of the billionaire's son-in-law to me. I was reborn to the day the billionaire came to our house to propose. As soon as I opened my eyes, I heard Bradley's voice. "Mom, Dad, I'm still young. My main task is to study, and I don't want to think about marriage too early." The billionaire William quickly responded, "When you move in, your aunt and I will provide better educational resources for you. It won't affect your studies." He was the richest man in Northport, but he had only one daughter. 10 years ago, my grandfather saved his life, and to thank him, our families arranged a marriage. Now, both Bradley and I were just starting middle school, but William wanted to secure a son-in-law to take home and personally educate, clearly intending to groom him as an heir. My mom, Maggie, also quickly persuaded, "Yes, Brad, Uncle Will arrange the best tutors for you and Vivi. Don't worry about your studies. Going to their home is also to help you adapt to their environment in advance since they have such a large family business." Bradley glanced at me, a subtle smile flashing in his eyes, and said, "Why not let my brother go instead?" However, my mom, afraid I would take advantage of this opportunity, hurriedly stopped him. "You're more sensible and mature than your brother. I don't trust him to go to someone else's house and cause trouble. Brad, listen to me. This is a rare opportunity. In our family, it had always been like this. Although Bradley and I were twins, he was always more important and received more love. It was like this in the previous life, and it was the same in this one. But this time, Bradley didn't listen to her. He frowned and said, "I'm not going," then got up and went back to his room. "Oh, this child," my mom sighed. With no other choice, she had to let me go with the billionaire couple. Bradley had always been smart and knew how to seize opportunities. Just yesterday, he told my mom that he wanted to impress the billionaire family today, so he could become their son-in-law. My mom couldn't understand why he suddenly changed his mind at the last minute, but I knew why. Because Bradley, like me, had also been reborn. In the previous life, he did everything to impress the billionaire couple and became their son-in-law as he wished. But when he got to their home, he found out that their daughter, Vivian, weighed over 300 pounds. He endured it for the sake of their fortune. After marriage, he successfully obtained shares of their company and became a successful person, while I was just a poor recent graduate living in the cheapest basement with my girlfriend. He flaunted his success in front of me, but within 2 years the billionaire family went bankrupt and the couple ended up in jail. As an important shareholder of the company, he was left with huge debts. To repay the debts, he had an affair with a wealthy woman, but Vivian caught him in bed and cut off his manhood, rendering him impotent. At that time, my longtime girlfriend became a movie star, and I also achieved career success. Unable to bear the poverty, his disability, and the gap between us, he invited me to visit our parents, but dragged me off a building with him. In this reborn life, he gave up the position of the billionaire's son-in-law to me. He thought he was the only one who had been reborn. When I was packing to leave home, he crossed his arms and smiled. Being the billionaire's son-in-law isn't as easy as it seems. I met his gaze and replied helplessly, "But isn't it because you don't want to go? Since childhood, everything you didn't want always became mine. What can I do?" He shrugged, seemingly enjoying my predicament. "Can't help it if our parents love me more." Seeing his attitude, I secretly laughed in my heart. He thought he had exchanged lives with me, but he didn't know that I was already terminally ill in the previous life. Even if he hadn't dragged me off the building, I wouldn't have lived much longer. I wondered if he would follow my old path again in this new life. Dear brother, if you don't use your brain, what's the point of being reborn? As soon as I arrived at the billionaire's home, Vivian gave me a hard time. The billionaire couple wanted me to stay in the room next to Vivian's, but she threw a tantrum. I don't want a man living next to me. Let him sleep in the basement, far away from me, or I won't feel safe. Vivian's mother tried to persuade her. Vivi, you will marry Sin in the future. You should start getting to know each other now. But Vivian kicked the table hard, her strength causing the bowls on it to shake. She pouted, her face layered with fat, looking not only not innocent but somewhat like an aunt, and nothing like a teenage girl. No, I don't like him. I want him to sleep in the basement. Vivian was notoriously ill-tempered, mainly because she was the billionaire couple's only child and was spoiled by them. Seeing the troubled expressions on the couple's faces, I took the initiative to speak up. Uncle, Auntie, please listen to Vivi. After all, we're still young, and it's only natural to live a bit farther apart. Mrs. Yu nodded with a look of relief. Good child. Your mother mentioned that you have a bit of a temper. I was worried you'd feel wronged. I didn't expect you to be so understanding. I forced a smile and remained silent. Of course, my mother would speak ill of me in front of them. She was afraid I'd steal Bradley's opportunities. Bradley and I are twins, but I was born 5 minutes earlier and weighed 2 pounds more. Bradley was born underweight and had to be put in intensive care immediately. It was a struggle to save him. My mother always felt it was my fault for taking all the nutrients while in her womb, almost causing Bradley's death. She firmly believed that a person's character is set in the womb, and she was convinced I was destined to be selfish and harmful to my sibling. Consequently, she resented me, and my father shared her feelings. They gave all their attention and love to Bradley. In that household, I was like an outsider. But back then, I was just a fetus. How could I have known my actions? However, in this life, I was able to leave my biological family early, and maybe I should thank Bradley for that. The basement was cold, and sometimes Vivi wouldn't even let me eat at the table. When Mr. and Mrs. Yu weren't around, she would often look at me with disdain and comment, "A man who loses his dignity for money." I would just smile without explaining. I believed time would reveal the truth and change people's perceptions. The high school entrance exam results came out soon, and just like in my previous life, I got into the experimental class of a prestigious high school, while Bradley only got into an ordinary one. However, in the previous life, Bradley still managed to attend the prestigious high school thanks to the Yu family's connections, and ended up in the same class as Vivi and me. This time, before school started, my parents brought Bradley to the Yu family, pleading with them to help Bradley get into the prestigious high school. After all, the Yu family had donated a lot to the school, and one admission spot was nothing to them. The Yu couple were a bit displeased, but agreed nonetheless. After they left, Mr. Yu sighed and said, "Good thing it was Sin who came to our family back then. Bradley couldn't even get into a prestigious high school. How could he manage the Yu family business in the future?" He then looked at me and said, "Sin, before you came to us, your mother claimed you weren't as good a student as Bradley. We were worried you wouldn't study hard. But seeing your excellent grades now, we're relieved. The future of the Yu family is in your hands and Vivi's, so you need to keep working hard." I nodded. In my past life, I got into the prestigious Stanford Business School. Now that I was reborn, high school courses were a piece of cake. When school started, Bradley, Vivi, and I were placed in the same class. Vivi and I got out of the car together, but she slammed the door and walked away quickly. This girl was really difficult. Despite spending the summer under the same roof, her attitude towards me hadn't softened at all. The whole day, Vivi didn't say a word to me. After school, she didn't wait for me either. Instead, Bradley came over gloating. "Looks like Miss Yu doesn't think much of you, the living son-in-law." I raised an eyebrow, remembering the first day of school in my previous life. It seemed that in that life, Vivi wasn't as hostile towards Bradley. They even left together after school. She was much kinder to him. Why was she treating me like this? I couldn't figure it out, so I decided to just go with the flow. The next day, Felix also reported to school. If the Yu family was the wealthiest, the Fu family was probably the second. They were newcomers, but their assets had rapidly accumulated in recent years, almost surpassing the Yu families. In my past life after graduation, I joined the Fu Corporation and naturally got to know this heir, even becoming friends to some extent. As soon as Felix saw Vivi, he exaggeratedly exclaimed, "Fat pig, you're here too?" Vivi was furious, almost breaking the pen in her hand. She pointed at him. You, look at yourself. You dared to confess to me in 9th grade. I remembered they had fought over this in my previous life, even alarming the principal. I quickly stepped in to stop Vivi. "Vivi, don't pay him any mind." To my surprise, she actually listened to me, nodded, and didn't say anything else. It was the first time she looked at me properly. Felix then noticed me. "Oh, so this is the Yu family's live-in son-in-law? Marrying a fat pig for money, huh? Impressive. It looks like Bradley is determined to replicate my past life, but unfortunately, the path I walked in my previous life wasn't as easy as it seemed. The relationship between the Fu family and me was mutually beneficial, not one where I simply received help from them. In this era, even blood brothers need to be clear about accounts. Does he really think becoming Felix's lackey will change his life? Given a second chance at life with so many opportunities, Bradley can only think of copying someone else's life. What a waste. I shook my head at him and said, "As long as you're happy, this is between us and has nothing to do with you." Vivian seemed to dislike Bradley even more than I did. As soon as she saw him approaching, she frowned and coldly said, "Get lost. Who do you think you are to act wild in front of me?" Then she turned to me and said, "Sincere, let's go." I picked up her backpack and followed her. Only then did I notice she had lost quite a bit of weight since I first met her. It seemed she was dieting. In my past life's memories, Vivian never lost weight. I wondered what made her start dieting this time. Vivian's determination to lose weight seemed particularly strong. She only ate 1 egg a day and ran for 2 hours in the park every morning. By the end of the semester, she had lost over 50 pounds. However, by the end of the semester, she hit a plateau. Despite eating less, her weight remained unchanged. She started more extreme dieting, skipping breakfast entirely and increasing her exercise. Despite my attempts to advise her, she always brushed me off. One day, during a long morning run, she fainted. I handed her a piece of chocolate I had prepared in advance. "You're dieting too extremely. You should always have some food to replenish your energy." She turned her head and snorted, "Mind your own business." I continued to advise her, "If you want to change, you need to be prepared for a long-term battle. This extreme method won't help you lose weight quickly and will harm your health. If you truly have the determination to succeed, you need to make a reasonable plan." I unwrapped the chocolate and pushed it into her mouth. "Don't hurt yourself. I'll diet with you. Trust me." In a daze, she chewed the chocolate, her cheeks turning slightly red. She awkwardly said, "Thank you." Despite Vivian's harsh attitude towards me, I admired her determination. After all, not everyone has the resolve to lose weight. People who strive always shine. Her attitude towards me improved a bit, and I started dieting with her. I accompanied her to the park for morning runs and had low-fat dinners with her in the evenings. To motivate her, we started a short video account to document her diet and weight changes. Many netizens joined her in her weight loss journey. By the time we started our junior year, Vivian had lost over 100 pounds. Although still heavier than average, her facial features had become much more defined, and she looked much more delicate. She had always had small, delicate features and fair skin, making her a potential beauty. In my previous life, she never lost weight before I died. This time, with my help, she was becoming more and more beautiful. I suddenly felt a sense of pride, treating people like nurturing flowers. I hoped that in this life, as my wife, she could rewrite her originally tragic fate with my help. At the start of the junior year, a new transfer student, Victoria, joined our class. Just like in my previous life, she caused a sensation upon arrival and was unanimously voted the school's beauty queen. But when I saw her delicate face, I only felt a chill. In my past life, she was the future movie queen and my wife. Felix didn't like Victoria's type, but Bradley began to pursue her fervently. It seemed he was determined to replicate my life, maintaining my friends and pursuing my wife. However, Victoria had so many suitors that Bradley didn't stand out. Despite being consistently rebuffed by Victoria, his relationship with Felix grew stronger. Felix started taking him everywhere, treating him like a brother. In the second semester of our junior year, the school organized a spring trip. In my past life, Victoria got lost during this trip. I braved the rain and went up the mountain alone to find her. From then on, she harbored feelings for me, and we became close. Sure enough, just like in my past life, it rained heavily on the day of the spring trip, and Victoria went missing again. The roadside was full of debris and mud washed down by the rain. Although many boys usually pursued Victoria, they hesitated in the face of danger, all saying they would stay put and wait for rescue teams to search the mountain. Bradley stood up and offered to look for her. He glanced at me and said, "Sin, you stay here. It's too dangerous. I'll go up the mountain to find Victoria myself." Seeing him so afraid that I would get ahead of him, I couldn't help but laugh. I never said I was going to find her. My fiancée is Vivian. She's here, so why would I go up the mountain to find someone else? Hearing this, Bradley looked satisfied and turned to start searching for Victoria. Vivian squinted at me, seemingly scrutinizing something. When I turned to look at her, she quickly averted her gaze. 2 hours later, Bradley returned to the camp, mud-covered with Victoria in tow. At that moment, I knew that fate was. The gears began to turn. After this ordeal, Victoria's attitude towards Brad had changed noticeably. In less than 2 months, Brad and Victoria started dating, and he won the beauty's heart. Vivian's weight loss results were remarkable. She had slimmed down to around pounds. Her followers on the platform grew in number, and her videos began generating significant revenue. With my foresight, I knew that the future would belong to social media, so I encouraged her to run her account diligently. This way, if the William family faced another crisis in the future, there might be a new opportunity. She listened to me and started actively engaging online, becoming a wealthy friend to many netizens. However, since the William family wasn't short on money now, she publicly donated all her earnings to children in mountainous areas. In my past life, she was Brad's wife, and I didn't know much about her. But now I found her to be resolute and kind, her entire being glowing with brilliance. One day during a break, Victoria approached me. Her expression was somewhat strange as she said, "Sincere, I had a dream. In the dream, you found me on a mountaintop and stayed with me." My eyelid twitched, but I tried to control my expression and remained calm, saying lightly, "You said it yourself, it was just a dream." Victoria persisted, "No, lately. I've been having this dream repeatedly. Going through this life, I feel." However, before she could finish, Brad interrupted her. "Victoria, what are you doing?" He and Fel walked in holding a basketball. Seeing Victoria sitting across from me, Brad immediately became tense. Victoria bit her lip and said, "Brad, I have something to ask, Sincere." Brad domineeringly pulled Victoria up, fearing she would have too much contact with me. He said, "If you have something to ask me. I'm your boyfriend." Victoria seemed a bit angry and snorted before returning to her seat. Brad hurried Vivian, hid behind the wall, and recorded everything. Now with the video of Felix bullying me, I refuse to believe his family can still secure the project. I sent the video to several bloggers, letting them stir things up first. Finally, I used our accounts to clarify that the person being beaten was indeed me. On the surface, Felix attacked me because of Bradley's girlfriend, but in reality it was due to the long-standing feud between the Felix and the William families. Both families are currently competing for an important project. Felix didn't think much when he struck me, but with the video and my embellished statements, even with 800 explanations, he couldn't talk his way out of it. Our fans on the internet were numerous, and they relentlessly condemned Felix. The incident continued to ferment, creating a terrible impact. The investors, seeing that Felix, as an heir, could resort to school bullying over a project, directly disqualified his family from the competition. Consequently, the William family successfully secured the project. Will, upon hearing the news, smiled and praised me. "Well done, Syn. I believe the William family will thrive even more with your help." He then started bringing me into the company, introducing me to the business and connections. One day, Victoria came to apologize. "I'm sorry for causing you to get beaten." Her eyes held a hint of sadness, and her long eyelashes trembled slightly, casting a shadow over her eyelids. She looked pitifully beautiful, but this time I wasn't moved. I looked at her calmly and said, "It's not your fault. Don't feel burdened." She bit her lip and continued, "In my dream, we got married, and Bradley was with Vivian. I know she must have suddenly remembered part of her past life, but I could only pretend to know nothing and said, 'You said it yourself, it was just a dream. How can you mix dreams with reality?'" She smiled bitterly, her beautiful face revealing a trace of desolation. "Yes, it was a dream, but I found myself getting lost in it. I think I might have fallen for you." I responded calmly, "Get a grip. I have a fiancé and you're my brother's girlfriend." I thought I might not be entirely indifferent towards my former lover, but at that moment I realized I felt nothing for her. I had already let go of the hurt she caused me and extinguished the old feelings. Now, with a healthy body, I could start a new life. In our past life, she betrayed me multiple times. Outwardly, we were the perfect match, a newlywed couple who had walked from school to the wedding altar. But behind the scenes, she frequently cheated with directors to gain resources. I was completely in the dark until my body began to show symptoms and I was diagnosed with HIV. Under the doctor's questioning, she finally confessed everything. I couldn't accept her betrayal. My health deteriorated rapidly, and the opportunity to systematically avoid the pitfalls that led to the bankruptcy of the U Corporation and to adjust the plans to ride the wave of the times was within grasp. By the time of our senior year mock exams, both Vivian and I had scores that could get us into Princeton. However, Bradley's scores barely made it to a second-tier university. This time around, he was only focused on how to ingratiate himself with the school beauty, completely neglecting self-improvement and even disregarding the pivotal college entrance exams. The day before the exams, my mom suddenly called, saying she was sick and wanted to see me. She asked me to come home with Bradley that evening, but I remembered that at this time in my previous life, nothing was wrong with her, and I instinctively felt it was another one of Bradley's tricks, so I refused her. However, she then directly called Will. Her voice was tearful as she said, "Mr. Yu, please let Syn take the call. I'm very sick." While crying, she coughed. At that moment, I was having dinner with the Yu family. Will handed me the phone, which was on speaker. She sobbed and said, "Syn, your mom is dying. Please come see me tomorrow. It won't delay your exams. You can't just ignore your mom now that you're with the Yu family." Her words put the Yu family and me in a difficult position. I had no choice but to agree. That evening after school, I went home with Bradley. My mom was lying in bed. She looked a bit tired, but otherwise fine. I told her, "Mom, if you're sick, you should go to the hospital." She shook her head and sighed. "I'll go to the hospital after you and Brad finish your exams." Before bed, Bradley came into my room with a glass of milk. After he left, I poured it into the trash can, thinking it was one of his tricks. But I never expected that the next morning I couldn't open my door. Someone had locked it from the outside. I pounded on the door and shouted, "Mom, open the door!" Bradley's voice came from the other side, surprisingly joyful. "Brother, you won't be getting out. I'm off to the exams." I clenched my fists. It seemed he couldn't bear to see me get into Princeton and turn things around, so he wanted to ruin my life. I continued shouting, "Mom, don't let Bradley make a mess. I need to go to the exams." But she apologized, saying, "Syn, I'm sorry. Bradley wants to marry Vivian, but his grades are only good enough if you don't succeed this time. You can retake the exams next year. He has a chance to join the Yu family." I knew my mom favored Bradley, but I never thought she would go this far, even at the cost of ruining my life. "Are you crazy?" Do you think the Yu family only cares about grades? And even with his grades, it's hard to say if he can get into a second-tier university. Mom, open the door. I'm running out of time. But she kept blaming me for Bradley's poor health, saying it was because I took too much nutrition while in her womb. I don't need your future care. I need to go to the exams. How long will you remain ignorant? Do you think I could control that while I was a fetus? And haven't I repaid enough? It's been 18 years. He eats meat while I drink soup. He gets new clothes every year while I wear hand-me-downs. I even use his old study materials. What more do I owe him? But my mom remained unmoved. Listen, Sin, let Bradley get into college with the Yu family's daughter. You can take the exams next year. Your grades are good. 1 year won't make a difference. In my despair, Vivian's clear, angelic voice came through. I won't be with Bradley, Auntie. Please let Sin out or I'll call the police. She had come to find me. Auntie, give me the key or I'll call the police now. Both you and Bradley will be arrested. This is illegal. Seeing that my mom still didn't move, Vivian took out her phone and dialed a number. Finally, my mom opened the door, fearing that Bradley would end up in jail. I grabbed Vivian's hand and took one last look at my mom. This is the last time I'll call you Mom. I've repaid everything I owe you and Bradley. From now on, I don't have a mom or a brother. Shaking with anger, Vivian comforted me by patting my shoulder. Once I calmed down, I asked her why she had come to find me. She explained, when I didn't hear from you, I guessed that Bradley must be up to something. She thought for a moment and then said, anyway, remember that Bradley is no good. Cut ties with him. He'll keep trying to harm you. This lifetime, Vivian had little contact with Bradley. How did she know his character? I looked at her, puzzled. Noticing my gaze, she slowly said, Sin, do you believe in reincarnation? I nodded as I had come back to life myself. Her eyes showed a pained expression. I am reborn. In my previous life, Bradley came to my family for money. He flattered me but secretly despised me and cheated on me. Remembering her past fate, my heart ached for her. It hurt as I grabbed her hand and held her fingers. All right, I believe you. Don't dwell on painful memories anymore. She looked at me deeply, her eyes filled with intense emotions. No, I want to continue. It's because I have memories of a past life that I thought you were like him. That's why I treated you so badly at first. But as we got to know each other, I realized you were completely different. Sincere, I thought after experiencing those things in my past life, my heart would never move again. But when I saw you weren't at the exam today, I was so scared. I was afraid you wouldn't make it, afraid something had happened to you. I think I like you. I gently stroked her cheek and smiled. Silly girl, I like you too. And I have also been reborn. Let's forget all the pain from our past lives. Love is like nurturing a flower. In this life, I will give you happiness. No wonder in this life, when I first went to the Williams house, she was so guarded against me. Completely different from how she treated Bradley. This girl has been carrying so much weight, and now I feel even more protective of her. Vivian and I were 15 minutes late, stepping into the exam hall just before the doors closed. You're just in time, good luck. The security guard at the door encouraged us. Vivian and I exchanged a glance and a smile, then went our separate ways to our respective exam rooms. The first subject was English, and missing 15 minutes didn't affect much. The 2 days of exams flew by. Later, Vivian told William and Maggie about what my mom had done, and they also blacklisted my parents. Maggie was so heartbroken by my experience that she cried. Sin, from now on, consider the Williams your home. Even though you're a son-in-law, we see you as our own son. In our hearts, you're the same as Vivi. I quickly said, thank you, Auntie. Call me Mom, Vivian teased from the side. Thank you, Mom. Maggie smiled and served me some food. Good son, from now on, our family is complete with both a son and a daughter. Vivian and I both got into Harvard. As a power couple of top students, many media outlets came to interview us. Plus, I had accumulated a fan base as a weight loss blogger before, making us hot online celebrities. The Williams business was facing a significant setback in the future. So we transitioned to a new industry, focusing on a media incubation platform. By the time Vivian and I graduated, William and Maggie had retired and were traveling around. Under our management, the Williams assets expanded dozens of times. Bradley eventually married Victoria as he wished, but without my help in selecting scripts and planning her career, she didn't become a top actress. She struggled in the entertainment industry for years and remained a minor celebrity. It seemed she only remembered part of her past life, recalling that I saved her fro.